It is Friday, November 22nd. Good morning, Eleanor. How are you this morning?
Excellent.
I just got a little private therapy consult just before this, so I'm still coming down from that. Thank you.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
so maybe while I sit and process, we'll do our thing, which is what you've been working on this week when I haven't been in contact with you and heard about
Um, this week I finished, last weekend I finished my chapter on divorce, and I called it Transformation and Destiny.
it.
And it was an interesting chapter to do because it's for a chapter in a book on transformation from divorce. And my process of doing it was pretty interesting because I observed how I process information. And so I had forgotten, I didn't really know when the chapter was due. Um, and I figured I can write this easily. So when I began to think about the deadline of November 30th, I said to myself, okay, what am I going to write about? How has my divorce transformed me? And what I realized was that it came down to a decision about which world I wanted to live in. And a lot of times in a relationship, and I've seen this with my clinical practice as I've begun to identify the four worlds and also looked at the charts. And my ex-husband and I had a very good relationship. I got married when I was 20, and we loved each other. And we were both, I was going to graduate school, he was in medical school. It was a perfect union. We never fought. Together, we were better than we would have been apart in school. Um, and when we both finished, um, was really when the relationship began to dissolve because it was very clear as he made doctor money, um, many of the values that he had spiritually began to erode away. And as I finished my dissertation and realized that I wanted to go into private practice and volunteered for a postdoc, I got more and more into my dreams of knowing with a K and knowing that I needed to be of service and that the money, I wasn't making decisions in my life based on money. And we diverged. And I needed to make a decision about whether I would be willing to sacrifice myself spiritually to stay in the relationship. And I couldn't do that. And I didn't want him to do it either. So I had the courage to set us both free. And I did it with young children and no job. I had volunteered to do the postdoc because we didn't need the money. And I didn't want anything from him. I just wanted out.
Mhm.
So thinking about that whole process and the freedom it gave both of us to be happy, um, I sat with it for a while. And I asked, as I usually do, I asked the divine, okay, give me my first sentence. Give me my opening paragraph. I was given the angle, but I didn't know how to write it. And so I just said every day, okay, do I have it? What's my first sentence? not there, not there, not there. So then one night, right before bed, I asked the question again. Do I have the first sentence yet? I know I need to write this paper over the weekend. So come on. And sure enough, there it was. And once I had the first sentence, I just put my light on, moved my cat, and opened my journal, and there was the document, just out of my consciousness. And I got about half of it with an outline for the finish. And then over the weekend, I sat down and wrote it and sent it off. So it was very interesting to observe that process in myself because it takes trust that it's going to be there and that I don't need to stress over it. So now I have a book I'm working on for a different publisher that is going to be inspirational instances from my life. And I pretty much have the outline of that. And one of my team has gone through many of my documents and pulled out stories I told. And we agreed yesterday I basically have the whole book. So it's a question of going through those. So I've been working on that. 6 of the books that I did with Ra are at the publisher. Her husband had an issue, medical issue, so she's a little delayed, but it's going to get done. And then I've been teaching my classes and doing the tree of life for each one every other week. That's pretty intense writing. I have to go in pretty deep to my notes on the tree of life, to researching it in other books that I have. And it's very revealing. It is one of the most empowering ways of studying oneself that I've ever found, especially when compared and paired with the body graph. So I've decided in December that I'm going to do a review for my students. I think they need the consolidation and the chart work that goes along with it. So I will do one more content. And then before we get to the path of probation, I will consolidate the lower triangle, which is so critical. The lower triangle of the tree of life is the cross of Christ. And most people get stuck in the emotional world between HUD or splenic center and solar plexus. And most of them are stuck in emotional reactivity and emotional regret, emotional wishes, emotional desires, things that don't have to do with who they are. And so falling back into our spirit and the core of who we are is critical in moving forward in evolution of consciousness. So the month of December, on the 6th of December, which will affect our podcast, Marvin and I are going to go visit our daughter in Texas.
Nice.
And it's right before my birthday. So she asked if I was coming for my birthday, and I said, not really. I'm just coming before it gets cold. So that will be a very nice weekend, short trip. But then in the beginning of January, I'm planning to do another 5-day experience for people. that was so powerful for
Mhm.
people that I'm going to do another one the beginning of January. I think it will be a good way for people to start the new year and get centered and anchored.
Right.
Uh, so, other than that, I'm back on my disciplined program of exercise
Oh, good. Swimming every day.
every day,
Good.
uh, doing the vibration plate and the
Way in there.
sauna and swimming and doing floor exercises and Tai Chi Gong. Self-care um, can easily be eroded away. And it's critical to stay disciplined,
Mhm.
especially with Pluto coming into Aquarius for me, because I have so much Aquarius in my chart.
Yeah. Well, I do too, I guess. I'm still not sure how to find Aquarius in my chart, but I know I'm an Aquarius. Um, and
Well,
it,
your sun is in Aquarius.
right. So I guess I have a lot of Aquarius in my chart. Um, the last couple of weeks, I'm just constantly reminded of the importance of self-care. Like it's just being pounded into me, and when I don't do it, I don't collapse, but the exhaustion comes quick right now. So I've been doing the qigong stuff and been using my sander, my belt, my buffer, and recently opened up my psoas on Tuesday. I went to it's like a pelvic floor class, and finally worked through some stuff that like I've been able to breathe differently all week. Like it was like I was cracked open. So
Great.
my latest has been using one of these to stand on,
Oh,
and then holding that qigong position, and then it's like really amazing. It's helped me with focus, but it's also the satsuma. Like I can really kind of create that strength and get the breath through it. So actually, what I'm going to do is just try to stand on this for the next. Without, hopefully, it's not too distracting, but it helps me with focus. So Pluto and Aquarius. I definitely want to talk about this because I never used to say or even think that I could feel the energy, but I can
hmm.
feel this. And it's been interesting to observe, like even just on uh, Facebook, seeing people talking about, because I'm all of a sudden I'm surrounded by people that are into astrology. So now all the opinions come out as well. And it's even like people nattering at each other about, is it Pluto in Aquarius? Or are we in the age of Aquarius? And one guy kind of went off and just, tired of all the dummies saying we're in the age of Aquarius. And it was just like, it's just so funny. It just became like watching the news, but with astrology. So my understanding is the age of Aquarius is like 100 years from now. Isn't that kind of like timeline?
I don't
Do we
know.
we don't know. Thank you.
I'm an astrologer, but I don't pay a lot of attention to it
Right.
because Katie said to me, my mentor astrologer said, don't live your life by astrology. So there were many times with her, like in my first reading, she said, well, dear, you're going to move. And I looked at her and I said, Katie, you're crazy. I'm not going to move. I unpacked my books for the first time in 12 years. Why would I move?
Mhm.
And I'm signing a lease on an office. And she said, well, dear, if you're going to sign a lease on an office, let me pick the date so you can get out of it. Thank God I did, because I did move.
Mhm.
And I saw the coast highway and the Pacific Ocean, and I said, this is home. And I ended up living on Napoli Drive, off Amalfi Drive. And I remembered shortly after I moved, dying in the eruption of Vesuvius in Herculaneum. And the area that we lived was a replica of the Amalfi Coast. And the Getty Museum the old Getty was a replica of a villa in Herculaneum. And then I started having dreams about Pliny. Pliny? Who the Pliny? And it turned out that Pliny was the first homeopathic physician who died in the eruption of Vesuvius when he came back for another trip to rescue people. And he was an oyster fisherman. And I began craving oysters. And then National Geographic had an article about the Villa of Mysteries. And I went, oh my God, it's a past life memory. And I lived, when I had gone to California to a Jungian conference, it was at Pepperdine, which was in Malibu. And I took my car, my rental car, and I drove up into the Palisades Hills. And I actually drove on the block that we ended up buying a house on. And it was paradise for me. I mean, that is my home. Where we live now, it's wonderful, but it's not home. But the Amalfi Napoli home was really where my heart was and my soul was. And so many of my friends in the Jungian community were with me in Herculaneum. And we came together in a seminar on the Villa of Mysteries. And it's very interesting because I think that what happened there was not dissimilar to what's happening in the world now. With the kind of evil, the Dionysian evil that was aberrant in many ways and damaging to the consciousness of the population. And so, knowing what I know now, it's not surprising that the civilization got wiped out. That segment of it. But so Katie told me I'd move. I thought she was crazy. I moved. Then actually, when Marvin and I started looking for a house to buy, we looked and looked and looked and finally found the house on Napoli. But it was way over our price range. And Katie said to me, just put a white light around it so nobody buys it. And then in 2 months, make an offer. And so I did that. And the house had been empty for 2 years. And we made an offer. And I said, oh, let's write it down on a piece of paper, what we agree to. A little, like a Post-it. And that became the legal binding contract. And we got it for a great price. We borrowed our last penny. We borrowed the realtor's commission. And we lived in the house for 42 years.
So,
and then Katie told me that I'd meet somebody who would be significant the rest of my life, the day and time. And then I was told in a meditation to go to India. And I went. And I thought, well, I'm not going to meet anybody in India. But the voice told me to go, so I went. And I met Marvin. And we've been married for 46 years now.
I have so many questions. One of them, which may, so you say in general you don't pay attention to what's going on in the astrology. However, you got advice from a mentor
And
that
I didn't follow it. I followed the contract, because there was no reason not to.
Mhm.
But if I had been following astrology and thinking of meeting someone important in my life, I would not have gone to India.
Would Catherine de Jersey, was she using astrology, or it was just a
Oh,
full?
she was an astrologer. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just so.
And I studied with her. I studied astrology to get her secret.
Mhm.
And I did get her secrets. And I also shared design with her and got her blessing on it, the way I was doing it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Hmm. So many questions.
And so many answers.
Yeah. Let me think about this for a second. So the one question I want to ask you right in the middle was, you talked about past life memory, and I'm wondering, is there a difference between a past life memory and reincarnation, and or do you have a thought on the two? And that's a starting question for a conversation thread we might get to today that I was having with Naomi last night. But past life memory, that came to you like you were in a meditation or something, right? So was it just you just channeled something in that moment, or you felt it?
I didn't get my past life memories in a meditation.
Okay.
I just remembered.
Hmm.
And several of them I was able to validate. I had one really interesting validation. My daughter and I remember a past life together as dancers uh, in France. And um, we were able to go back and do her chart for that past life and confirm that she was who we think she was,
Hmm.
because it hooks up with her current chart. Uh, and that was very transformational for her.
Hmm.
I got that past life doing a past life regression with her. I studied early in my career with Dolores Cannon when she was still working off typewritten sheets.
What was she like? I don't know too much about her other than I see old.
I didn't meet her, I just had her materials.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Hmm. Fascinating. Um, yeah, I want to run this by you because it keeps popping in my head. And I might have told you this story before. Do you remember when those people went on the submersible down to the Titanic, and they imploded, and it was like last year and a half ago, right? Basically like a tourist stunt that cost people their lives. And I, like, for whatever reason, through my whole life, the Titanic has stood out for me. Like, I was super interested at school. Everywhere I go, there's a Titanic exhibit. Like in Victoria, it was here for ages. We went to Ireland last year, just happened to be at the Titanic Museum. It was just like all that word, like I didn't go there with that. Anyways, small little details there. But for whatever reason, always felt a connection to it. And then when that event was going on, I felt enraged. Like I was doing everything I could to hold back from just like putting recording on Instagram saying like, what are we doing? Because it just was so, I felt like I was the captain of the ship, like, and was like, we've already made this mistake. Do we have to keep making this mistake? That was the feeling, right? Because it seemed like the whole world was on pause as we waited to hear if these people were alive or dead. And of course, within, it was like 1/10 of a second, they were dead. So we just all waited on, when they sent out ships to try to save these people, and, dispatched people that could have been helping other people at the time, like just resources wasted, right? And then it's in the news, and it was just so horrific. But I was just so angry at the people in the sub, right? Like the father that took his son. like, we've all seen lots of Titanic footage. And they're going to look through a hole this big in uncomfortable situations. They're not touching the Titanic. They're not there. They're still just looking through a piece of glass. And it's just so awful. And I can't shake the idea that I've got some of that in me.
What if it was a karmic pull?
What's a karmic pull?
Are you asking me what's a karmic pull?
Mm-hmm.
These people, well, when you do something that comes out of your soul, it may not make sense. It may not be rational, but you may have to do it.
Oh, may have to do it. As in, I should have said something and let it out?
I don't know, but no, I'm saying for the people who went to see the Titanic,
All right.
maybe there was a reason for them to be there and die.
Yeah.
And who are we to judge
Mm-hmm.
why somebody does something or doesn't do something?
Yeah.
And maybe you lost some people in the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you are fascinated by it and have an aversion to it.
It's possible. The way I went with it is I started digging into like where Edward Smith was born, and like my family's from not far from there. So part of me is like, well, the guy went to the washroom one day, his stuff mixed with the earth, someone ate some corn, someone in my family, therefore I've inherited some of that genetic content. So that's where my brain went. And I do wonder at times if that's like part of what we're talking about when we talk about genetic history, is we're actually like taking in that data through the earth. And that's where I always come back to mushrooms being the path. I think they're like gate zero, because they're at the start and end of life. So there's something there for sure, that I can't shake. But anyways, thank you for letting me get that thought out. Could actually feel like stuff release. It was very interesting when you were talking about, what did you call it again? A karmic pull. I'm gonna have to sit with that for a bit. That was interesting. I could feel.
I think that karmic pull is a good way to describe it. There are things in our life that we gravitate toward, that are familiar, that resonate with us.
Mhm.
And some of them, I remember a past life when I was a writer. Writing is easy for me. I started writing when as soon as I had handwriting, I started keeping a diary.
Mhm.
And I've consistently kept diaries my whole life. And sitting down at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day and writing has been a savior for me.
Mhm.
I've written poetry, I've written stories, I've written, papers, but it's my form of expression. And other people don't have that. They do it a different way. It's for you, it's drums. Where does that come from? As a kid, you were drawn to drum. Is it a past life? Is it a past memory? Is it a genetic? Who knows? It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
If we follow who we are, that's all that matters.
Mhm. I've been journaling a bit lately. You've been encouraging me to do that. And pretty much everywhere, it seems to be suggesting to me, the universe is telling me to journal. And
Make sure you use the right notebook and the right pen.
okay. I'll get you to explain that in a second too. But I my main thing is this resistance to doing it. Like it's there's this, I've got a block, and even when I sit down to do it, I'll make excuses like, oh, my hand's tired. There's some sort of resistance, but every time I start, it starts flowing out of me. Even if it's just like a great idea that I've had, that it will just go away. Like if I don't write it down, it's potentially gone, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So there's a lot of past brilliance that might have been valuable had I written some of that shit down. So, so I'd love to break through that resistance to.
You may need the right journal and the right pen.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you mean by right journal and right pen? I'm listening.
I have a thing about pen and clocks and paper. So I like to use moleskin notebooks because the ink doesn't bleed. And I like to use a fountain pen because I like my handwriting to be beautiful.
And when you say you like to take great care when you write, so
yes, I do. I prefer handwriting to the computer. It's a different process. When I wrote my chapter on divorce, I hand wrote it before I put it on the computer. Sometimes I print charts because the experience of touching them and looking at them in the flesh is different than looking at them on a computer. So I use good paper that feels silky, and I don't want my ink bleeding through the page. I don't want to see it if I turn the paper over. And I make it a ceremony where I treat my psyche with respect and give it its voice. So if you think about it in terms of the four worlds, if you're bringing your notebook into the mental world, it's not going to happen. Because the mental world is busy. Oh, you have this to do and that to do and this to think about and that to think. And you have to be in yourself when you're writing.
Yeah, as you said that, I found myself thinking the mental world is where I'm always looking for efficiencies. So I can type really fast, so then I am disconnected from that process very much so. Like my handwriting is abysmal because I haven't done it in so long. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
If you write it, you have a different sensation because you're forming the words. Whereas when you're typing it, you're not forming the words. Now, that's not to say that you can't do it on the computer if that's your modality. But I would have a separate file, a separate folder. And if I were doing it on the computer, usually it has its own folder and it's separate from my other stuff.
Now there's, as you're describing it, with the computer, even when I type, I would probably say to someone I could probably type 90 words a minute, but I backspace just as fast, right? Like there's so many mistakes that it's like, it's just, right? So there's no clarity of thought. I loved how you put that, like with a fountain pen, like there's no forgiveness. You can't, it's not a pencil, you can't erase it. So you're like, so if you care about what you're doing, you're going to slow down, you're going to be discerning and or intentional in your process of what you're going to want to put the right words down.
It's even more than that. It's ceremonial. It's it's a dedicated notebook. It's a dedicated pen. It's a dedicated time and space. And it's all about the inner process. So it makes the spirit very happy.
Yeah, that's all about intention for sure. So do you journal after meditation? Is the journal just always at your side and it's just when the inspiration comes, the journal comes out? Or is there a process to that?
It's not that organized. I keep a journal by my bed, which I would say is my most internal journal. I have a journal on my desk that I take notes on if I have something in work that I want to remember or I'm working something out. I have many notebooks. I took my wall unit down and there are so many notebooks that it's embarrassing.
And you're not worried about cataloging them. It's more that you went through the process, got what you needed, and if you had to look for it, you could go find it again. Right?
Well, actually, mm, yeah, what I handwrite, I don't share with people for the most part.
Right.
What I write on the computer, I do share with people. One is mental world, tapping into the other worlds, and the other is spiritual world, that's tapping into deep inner space.
Mm-hmm. Just to go back in one earlier, you talked about you were contemplating which world you would prefer to be in. And in my head, I immediately assumed that you meant the spiritual world. I'm assuming that's what you meant at the time, right? You didn't.
I like being in all worlds.
Mm. So you think in terms of the integrated world?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Remember, I got into a PhD program that respected my drive to be in the integrated world. And I remember writing the paper that got me into the department. I literally remember sitting there at my typewriter, writing the essay about why I wanted to go to that department. And I knew when I wrote it that I would get in. And then I went for the interview and met with a lady. Her name was Alice. And I knew that I was in. I knew that I'd be accepted. Because it was perfect for me. It was designed for me. It hit every note that I wanted.
That's interesting. So, like, you knew you were going to get in, you knew it was going to happen because it was perfect for you, but there's always other people involved in the process, right? Bias or people that might try to block that.
Mhm.
So was it a relief when you got in? Was there any doubt, or just somehow knowing with a K, like
I knew I was going to get in.
So my mind just goes, well, what if you didn't? What would happen next? But I guess you just,
I would have gone, well, I got into more than one school.
right. So you had a backup plan.
Well, I applied to several schools and I didn't just get into one school.
Yeah. No, good. I don't know if that, I hope that didn't sound like a criticism. It's very, very pragmatic.
No, I mean, you never just limit yourself to one option.
Yeah.
You want options. So yes, I had options, but I knew without a doubt what the right place for me was.
Yeah.
And I assumed that I would be, I mean, I knew. I mean, when you connect with someone that they really like you and respect you and think you're good. I mean, I haven't had many jobs in my life. So when I went and applied for teaching positions, I had the same feeling. I'd go in, I'd apply, they'd look at me and they'd accept me. And, you know, now maybe I had good judgment in where I applied.
Mhm.
I don't know. I had good grades. I did phenomenally well on the achievement tests.
Yeah, I get the sense you
Um,
were a voracious student. So,
I am a very diligent, compulsive student, yes.
hmm,
Getting less than an A was not acceptable.
hmm. And that was to you, right? Not to your parents, for example.
My parents didn't care what I got.
Hmm, yeah,
No, they wanted us to be educated. Neither of my parents had finished high school. I insisted that my mother get her high school equivalency diploma because it was important to her. And of course, and my parents had high IQs. My father um, could multiply any number in his head and get the correct answer. And I inherited his mathematical ability, and he had a beautiful handwriting. He also was obsessed with pens
hmm.
and paper. So were a couple of my sisters. We have a thing about clocks and pens.
So what's the thing about clocks? Where do you think that comes from? Because I remember seeing all the clocks on your desk there, and they weren't even set to the right time. So it's more that the clock is there versus the act.
No, some of them were just not important enough for me to fix.
Hmm.
But and one of the clocks, my daughter brought me from Europe with an astrology face, and it never worked.
Hmm.
But it's beautiful. So I hung it up. But there's something about the creativity of writing, of penmanship. It's an art form.
Hmm. Uh, it's interesting. I immediately thought of Steve Jobs there. You read his chart at some point in one of your books, I
Oh
recall.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
He
love
was
Steve Jobs.
really infatuated with fonts and
Calligraphy.
calligraphy. Yeah. And so that's,
I was too as a kid.
yeah. I mean, I think that somehow, I think that was and I think I've heard him say that it was a big part of Apple's core culture was like attention to detail, beauty in the curves of every letter mattered, right? And it was an aesthetic that didn't exist in technology in the 80s for sure. Like it stood out because everything was just so hard and binary. So yeah, interesting. We've got some people in the chat. Do you want me to?
Sure.
So the first question, this is from a little while ago, so it'd be going back into conversation a bit, but it's from Love in the Light. Does Dr. Eleanor still do past life regressions?
Yes.
I don't even really know what that is. What is that? What would that process be for someone that was in a session like that? And what are the benefits?
Um, you do a fairly traditional hypnotic induction and take them back to a time before their birth, or a life memory that they want to explore, and ask some questions and they give you the answers.
Hmm. That's what I thought it was. So yes, I actually went for one about 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, with someone that a number of people had very positive results from. And I had a very positive experience, but she said when she was guiding me into the meditation that I seemed to be resisting it. And she kind of let me do my own thing. And I can kind of remember guiding the hypnosis. Like I was there, but still. And so it ended up being kind of peripheral. It had nothing to do with past life stuff. There's a question in here. Yeah, here's the question. I don't seem to dream still. Like, and I hear people folks always talk about their experiences, whether it's a past life regression or something that these visuals, they have this knowing of something in the past.
Not everybody does.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever remembered that, even for a second. Like if I have a dream, it's very, very rare that I remember anything. If I didn't write it down, it's gone within 3 seconds. Like gone with I know.
Well, that's normal for it to be gone.
Okay.
But not everybody remembers their dreams. You have to have a journal next to your bed. You have to go to sleep asking to remember your dream. You have to wake up asking if you did dream first thing before you think anything.
Oh, interesting. So prompts. I've been exploring intention going into meditation of things I'd like to find. Never thought about prompting in the morning though. Interesting.
Well, if you wake up and you jump out of bed and you start to move around, you're not going to remember your dreams because it's a different state of consciousness. And consciousness is state specific. So once you are in a waking consciousness, you're not going to remember your dreams. Unless you've remembered fragments of the dream and brought it into waking consciousness.
Waking up in the morning has been different lately. Before it was like dreading waking up. And I've recently realized that I sort of dread going to sleep. Like I'll put off going to bed. So it's almost like I don't want to do it. I know I need it. I need the rest, but I dread it. And then for the longest time, getting up it just took every ounce of energy to pull myself out of bed. That has shifted a bit. I still kind of wake up not like it takes a minute to remember who I am. Like it's like
so before you remember who you are, ask what your dreams told you.
Yeah.
Just ask a question. What do I remember? Or what do I know now? Clean question.
Okay. Thank you.
I keep a pen and a pad of paper open. Because if I get up in the middle of the night and remember something, I write it down.
Oh, I'm gonna have my journal here. I literally did wake up last night, and it was right because I think I was telling you that before we started here that I did some hypnosis last night on grief, and I went into that intention actually planning to listen to a hypnosis on not suffocation, but when you feel like you can't breathe.
Asthmatic?
No, claustrophobic.
Oh.
So I went to bed last night intending to do that hypnosis. And then for some reason, the grief one was right in front of it. I was like, oh no, this is what I'm doing. And it was interesting that during the grief hypnosis, everything that came up was all about being able to breathe. And I wrote down the air is already there. Like, and I've noticed like I forget to breathe all the time. And it's been apparent for a long time, like where my trainers at the gym they're not mocking me, but they'd be like, you're holding your breath. Every time you're trying to lift heavy weights, you're holding your breath, which is going to be terrible for your back. Everything's constricted. So there's something to do with my focus and holding my breath that I'm I feel like I'm super close. But like last night, there was like a mental block related to grief. And I think I instinctively knew that I had this tightness in my chest or something.
Sean, why are you working so hard on figuring yourself out?
Very good question. It's like a,
You're working so hard, and what for?
it's no longer coming from a place of worthiness. I think I kind of like the continual improvement at this point, like the investigation. Um,
But you're doing it so
but it,
seriously.
no, I think I'm pretty playful. I think I'd be.
Okay, good. Okay.
No, I think it's when I'm talking to you, I feel a bit student teacher, so I find myself a little more tight, and so it just takes a while to get relaxed. But yeah, yeah, no, for the most part, it is playful. And last night was a relief with the whole grief thing. Like I was surprised at the necessary timeliness of doing that hypnosis. There's no current grief, but it was my past life grief stuff. So that was very powerful. I'll probably have to do it again. But yeah, anyways, all that to say, I was trying to, yeah, circling back, the truck back. I was trying to draw in the dark this thing because I was like so into the hypnosis, but I was like, I have to write this down. And then I was like wrestling with, I didn't want to break state. So, anyways, I'm glad I wrote it down because the air is already there. It was like my body, and you were talking about this, I think, this week. The body already knows how to breathe, but I find like the mental mind is stopping the breathing somehow, and that's what I'm trying to just make more flowy because I have to still concentrate on breathing. I have to think about it, and if I get amped up and
Not
it's
all the
I
time.
have to breathe. Sorry,
You don't think about breathing all the time.
no.
Many times you breathe on your own,
Mhm.
or you'd be dead.
Yeah, I wonder if I stop breathing when I'm feeling an emotional response. I could feel someone's energy, almost like it tightens around the central column. In fact,
Mhm.
I can go from actually feeling incredibly relaxed around my kidneys, and then within 10 minutes, it's like it was for the last 30 years. Like it can come back so fast. Like it's like inflamed. I'm getting really good at recognizing that and
And
recognizing it's,
releasing it.
yeah, it's been pretty profound this week actually. But it usually comes down to I'm holding my breath again. Like I can even feel it now as I'm anxious about talking about this, and I could just feel it like going right up here.
What kind of anxiety is the anxiety?
What kind of anxiety? Um, hmm. it, for me, I've been feeling so much release and relief lately, just talking things out. So I don't know if it's that there's not many opportunities for me to be heard, where I'm usually the listener, or and again, it's interesting the journaling thing. Like that's where I can let some stuff out, or still like I still don't make enough time to draw where I can let stuff out. There's always yeah. There's
Why
a
don't you make enough time to drum?
uh, lately it's still just financial stuff. It's just burdens of the outside world. Trying to be trying to run businesses and be a mature adult when I need time to play. So yeah. So it's a balance that I'm still working with. That was the other thing that came up yesterday, and maybe that ties into this, is I recognize how important now having a routine is for self-care, but I also everything I understand about myself requires some freedom, like freedom from a schedule. And so there's this paradox that I'm,
Well, maybe you can do a business that gives you freedom.
Yeah. I'm getting pretty close to doing that too. So I feel like that's happening. There's
Good.
definitely a amount of faith in that it'll work out, because it's not the kind of work I did before. And it's not the kind of work that people expect of me and my skill set from the past. So yeah, I've been working, I'm almost through that. Even just talking through that's good. Okay. Is this a question? Well, let's just start because it's nice. And then I think there's a question in here. This is from Nikki Williams. Dr. Eleanor, you bring so much inspiration to the smallest things I've always valued that were so easily washed away due to me allowing someone else's opinion to dictate how I be. And then there's a follow-up. On a spiritual level, through the body, I understand and feel why this so deeply. It is sacred and ceremonial. Thank you for sparking my spirit in ways that help me remember me. Mm-hmm. Not so much a question, but certainly lovely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything of that you want to respond to? Does that make you think of anything?
Well, it's nice to know that some of what I'm saying is helping people go back into their own spirit and value what they value.
Yeah. Well,
and not everybody, well, growing up, not everybody supported me doing my own thing, but my parents would always say, leave her alone. Let her do her own thing. And I didn't care what my siblings thought. I just did my own thing. So encouraging people to value what they value because it resonates with them is, I mean, to me, it's common sense. You don't move people away from who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Let's see.
Can you save the chat?
Yeah, depending on where it came from, these are all from YouTube, so that are actually with the YouTube feed. So they'll be there. We can grab those later. Hello, Dr. Eleanor and Sean. Always enjoy watching. Oh, this is from Mundane Mystic. Okay, here's a question. With Pluto entering gate 41 soon, would like to know your thoughts. I have my design Mars in 41 line 5, 8th house.
Well, if it's in the 8th house and Pluto is entering Aquarius in your 8th house, you're being pushed toward spirit and toward your abilities beyond the ordinary in the spirit world. So depending on what degree it is, would determine the nuance of it. And Pluto in Aquarius is going to bring changes of consciousness, changes of perception, changes of awareness, changes of how you think about yourself, how you think about friendships and community. And with Mars, it's going to wake you up. It's not just, I mean, Pluto is transformation and Mars is sharp. It's warlike. It's energy. And its ruler is Aries. So it's fire. So take fire and air, and what do you get? Combustion. So you're going to have some shifts in your consciousness. If you open to it and accept it, it could be beautiful. And if you resist it and push it away, it could bop you over the head. So surrender to it, embrace it, set time aside for it, and be clear on, I want to say what you're open to, but it's more get right with it. If you're afraid and resist it, it's going to be painful. If you embrace it and allow it, it can be uplifting and expansive. Remember, any astrological aspect to your chart, you get to choose what you do with it. It is not predestined. It is how you approach it. So, I use the example of Mercury retrograde. Because Katie told me don't live your life by astrology, I don't. And when I've seen that Mercury's retrograde, there have been times when I've gotten a car or I've asked about doing something else in my life. And the answer is always, go ahead and do it.
Mhm.
Don't worry about the aspect. So determine for yourself where you are spiritually and what your goals are, and let those guide you, knowing that whatever it is you set for yourself as an intention that aligns with you, you will be supported in. But if you resist it, you won't be supported.
Mhm. Cool.
This stuff is not complicated and it's not worrisome. And even with the world situation, there's enough signs that God's in command that none of us should be worried. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I have trust that if there were the idiots in power trying to start a war, um, the extraterrestrials would come in and dismantle the nuclear again.
Mhm.
They've done it before, they'll do it again.
I never know where to go with that because it's so fascinating. But I will say, and at the timely with my journal, possibly, in with this question, Pluto entering gate 41. Gate 34 is in the sun right now, and I've got 34 in my chart. And one thing I've been exploring a lot with lately, particularly with Name, is like when a gator channel is in transit, trying to connect with someone that has that in their design to get a feel for that energy from them. And that's been interesting. What I wrote down, apparently Osho said something, easy is right. This is a phrase he used. And that like really resonated yesterday. Someone had suggested that's kind of the energy of the 34. Like there's a lot of power.
I think all of you human design people are thinking too much.
Sure.
Because all of that human design was in the mental world.
Mm.
That's all they had.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. Okay. Nikki Williams has a question for you here. Any thoughts on Pluto in Aquarius and children? It's going to be a human design question, but I have my natal Pluto in gate 44 in the 5th house. Pluto is transiting my 8th house in Aquarius, and I have Mercury retrograde 1.5 and 13 line 1.
I would have to look at the chart because I can't put it together in my head.
Mhm.
But live your life and don't live your chart.
Mhm.
is my advice. Stop paying so much attention to transits and nuances and all of that. It'll make you crazy.
Mhm.
And it will detract from your life instead of adding to it.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend you look at your integrated chart, you recognize that you're from probably a manifesting generator, and resonate with what you connect with. If you have children, if you have a partner, if you have people in your life, they're affecting you. You're not living your design alone. You're an interactive human being, and there are energies around you and energies collectively. So open your heart and decide where and how you want to be. And don't let any outside force dissuade you from being who you want to be for yourself.
Mhm.
I found these great LMNT electrolytes. This one is chocolate caramel.
You put it in water, chocolate caramel water.
Yeah. Chocolate caramel water. That's electrolytes. And it tastes like a chocolate drink. Very good.
Mhm. Where to go now? I'm gonna pull out my thread from with Naomi last night. It's a little human designy, but it kind of ties into our conversation from earlier about past lives and stuff too. So she helped me compose my question for me because we were having a good little ramble last night. So I this is her words, but what I was saying. I feel deeply connected to George Gurdjieff. This is kind of along the same lines
Oh,
as Gurdjieff. Are you familiar with?
oh, Gurdjieff.
Feel like you've mentioned him before. So,
Hmm.
and I'm not super familiar with him, other than every time I've kind of gone down that path and looked at his life interactions, there was things that I just thought, wow, that'd be a guy I'd like to meet for some reason. So the question is, I feel deeply connected to George Gurdjieff. If I wanted to access the Akashic records to ask about my soul's connection with him, which worlds would I work with? Now, the human designy element here is that you've mentioned before the 1333 is a path to the Akashic records. I have said channel. And so if I was nuanced in that
You would
direction,
not use your design. You would close your eyes and you would ask to know what you know.
that's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're making this so complicated
Well,
and
I'm
so
getting.
intellectually convoluted that
Mm,
you're losing intuition. Remember, in the path of Shin, the path of perpetual intelligence, you know the core of who you are. You don't need a damn chart. All you need is to ask and you will receive. And it's not about a channel and it's not about an Akashic record. It's about you and your psyche and who you are and what you know and what you remember and what you connect with. You're all making it so intellectual, you're not going to get what you need.
mhm.
It's not, how do I say it? Just live, just live and stop. being so serious. And all of those philosophers and historians, they're not going to give you your life, the quality of your life. Spend time with your wife. Spend time connecting, looking in each other's eyes, holding each other's hands, having great sex. Do things that enliven you in this life. It's not intellectual. Get out of the mental world. Go for a walk with Wendy, and you'll get more out of that than you will sitting and doing a hypnosis.
Mhm. Okay.
You know what I'm saying, Sean? I mean,
Mhm.
the human design has become so intellectual. Yes, we need intellectual knowledge, but then let go of it and live
Mhm.
and manifest it. So take everything you've learned in the last 6 or 8 months and integrate it into your life
Mhm.
in a way that brings you the business you need, the money you need, the joy you need, the connection you need. Sitting and talking about it, you're not going to get it.
Yeah. No, I know. No,
I
I
know
mean,
you.
yeah, like I'm living it and doing it. It's part of these conversations always have a human design slant because that's how we met. So I think there's an element of that. So I almost and of course other people have questions that are I'm the proxy for, and they end up being human design questions. So so I'm happy not to talk about design. So
There are other questions?
there's a comment from Mundane Mystic. I don't know if it's a question. Let's see. Yes, human design gets too mental, but I feel like it gives me good source of mental stimulation. I don't have any other healthy outlets. I guess it's my defined ajna. So it's very human design response. Uh, hmm. Like it's mental ear and eye candy. At this point, for me, and I find myself in situations where I hear people doing, let's call it human design talk, which I can engage with because there's aspects of it that I've lived and felt. But I do find myself more interested in how energy flows and how interactions go.
Mhm.
So
I came across a human design chat in a Facebook group. I have to go back and find it. They were saying that they checked with Jovian about who owns the copyright. And I own the copyright to the body graph. I want to be clear on that. I have it registered with the Copyright Office. I have proof, and I also have a trademark. So if anybody disputes and wants to see the copyright, I have proof of it.
hmm,
And Ra was, when I worked with Ra, he didn't have any copyrights.
mhm.
And when we began publishing, I copyrighted everything we published. And Neutrino through Windows, Eric's program, was also not copyrighted. So on Eric's behalf, I copyrighted all the source code for his program.
Sit down. Well, and maybe you should just share it and publish it just so that that conversation ends, right? Like just
I
do it.
will. I
Yeah,
have to, I will go back and find it and put it on that Facebook group.
yeah. I think that's worthwhile because
Well, it's legally, it's imperative.
yeah, yeah, it's not something you need to keep secret or anything, right? It's something that can be out there. It's a thing.
Well,
And,
anybody can go to the Copyright Office and search for it and find it.
yeah, there you go. I remember you saying something like, because when you were going into business with Raw, like that was the plan. he said something like, everyone was all a bunch of hippies. They were just wearing jeans and I forget how you describe them, but like, I knew the picture you're drawing, and I was the only person like dressed like a professional and showed up as a professional. I mean, that's all people need to know back then. That's what happened. It doesn't matter what story has been told since then, and and what legal garbage that's going on. Yeah, that's just what was happening at that time. I mean, what was that? I've asked you this before, but like at that time frame, you show up with Marvin, two doctors, credentialed. You had all the core background knowledge from the synthesis, like you were familiar with it all. And then there's all these folks hanging out, very mystic vibe, I'm guessing, a lot of like.
Well, a lot of flaky people.
Yeah. So, but flaky, yeah, we can call it flaky people, but with no access to some knowledge that feels profound and powerful, right? Like you're in
Right.
a moment like, how does nobody else see this, right? It's, to me, that's how profound the information is like, why is this hard for the masses to just go, oh yeah, that's it. But of course, everyone's got their own point of view and experience. But yeah, maybe would you be able to talk a bit more about that time frame, like what that was like?
Well, I showed up, I studied with Zeno privately. I had already studied astrology, so I was already an astrologer. I was already a researcher. By the time I met Ra, I had done all of my family and all of my clients' human design charts and their astrology charts and the progressions of the charts. And I began looking to see if I drew the progressions into the body graph, if it would show. I was interested in whether or not the human design system could show me what I would have done with my chart. Because every astrologer I studied with, I would say, how would you know that this would be happening, this event, rather than this event? So, for example, I said, where does it show in my chart that I had polio when I was 7? Where does it show in my chart that this event happened in my life? And they didn't have the answer. And most astrology is retrospective. You look back and you say, oh, it was that aspect that caused this to happen. And that was not scientific for me. In all of my work with all of the astrologers I worked with Pamela Crane in Interdimensional, Thurza Escobar in the Star Wheel, Gloria Stein in Traditional, Coke and Placidus. Pamela worked with Tropical, Sidereal, and Draconic. And out of that, I was learning about ionamshas and calculations and all of that. And I already knew how to calculate a hand chart, which I studied in 1971. I thought it was the hardest thing I'd ever learned. And so when I found design, and it was a synthesis of systems that I already was familiar with, I thought, oh, here's where I'll be able to see what turns on when these events happen.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went in to my session with Ra, I scheduled him for a whole day, which I think sort of took him aback. I showed him, I had actually brought with me my mother's chart, my sister's chart, my brother's chart. I'm youngest of 5. I had everybody's chart. I had my parents' chart. I had my grandparents' charts. And I had my chart from when I had polio. And I had done a secondary progress chart and put it in a body graph. Rod didn't know astrology. He didn't know what I was showing him. And his answer to me was, oh, you don't need any of that. Like this, you don't need any of that. All you need is the human design chart. Well, he was completely wrong about my daughter. He was completely wrong about my mother. So I went into the class the next day and I was dressed in my suit as a professional, and most of the people there had no astrology knowledge, had no sense about what they were looking for. And it was purely formulaic. And Zeno was extremely formulaic at that point. And you had to read a chart according to the formula. Whether or not it fit the person, you read it according to a formula. And there were only 4 types at that point. The manifesting generator was not its own type. It was a subtype. And there was a lot of disempowering language. So I didn't exactly fit in. I wasn't interested, for one thing, I had my husband there. And we love each other and we like spending time together. So other than the classes, I wasn't into socializing and hanging out because I had my husband to hang out with. And Tom Pfeiffer and I became friends. He sat next to me and he took a liking to me. And once Marvin left and I stayed to take the exam, it was not pleasant. There was a mouse in my room. It was not pleasant. It was freaked me out. What?
You went to take an exam and then there's a mouse in your room. You lost me.
Well, I'm there studying all by myself in my hotel room.
Oh, there was a test to
Yeah, a test.
Got it.
So I'm studying for this test that Zeno told me before I came, oh no, you don't have to memorize anything. That was bullshit. So I stayed an extra week to take the exam and memorize everything. And of course, I took the exam and passed the exam and became an analyst, which later Rod did not want me to be an analyst because he wanted me separated from the human design community as a scientist. And I broke with him so that was October of 96. He came to visit and stay with us September of 97. February of 98, I wanted nothing more to do with him because of the way he treated me, my daughter, not honoring our contract, and I was done.
Right.
I thought he was a scoundrel and I thought he was a wimp. And I didn't think that he and Zeno respected professionalism. And they didn't want me expanding my knowledge. And when you're a social scientist the way I am, you don't stop somebody from studying. So I continued my work with design, but I stopped relating to the design community. And then Tom Pfeiffer had bootlegged all of the recordings and kept sending them to me. So when Ra showed up in May of 1999, destitute and asking for help. He was thrilled that we had everything
Mm.
because he was a rebel and he didn't like Zeno and Chaitanya. And he was on the outs with them. So he was thrilled that I had all the information preserved.
Mhm.
And we used it. So I was not part of the human design community. I was always peripheral to it. And then after my contract with him, where he was very clear that I was to be the professional arm of design dealing with professionals and doctors and psychologists and professionals, licensed professionals, basically, and leave human design for him to dumb down to a fourth grade level, since I wasn't good at doing that. And I'm not good at doing that. You just have to read any of the papers I've written on the Tree of Life, and you know I can't dumb it down.
Mhm. Hmm. Well, that's why I'm here. I'm
You dumb
playful.
it down.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Well, you put it in understandable English.
Mhm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it got commercialized. It got locked down early on because of need to make money, pay bills, you know.
Ra's whole purpose
License.
was to make money. That's
Yeah.
all he wanted to do. And he had people sign a contract. And one of the things he did was, I had a 50-50 contract with him. I owned the material that we published and had the rights to copyright it. And whatever we did together, I owned the rights to and could do whatever I wanted with. That was in the contract. So after he started Jovian, and he started Jovian because I wouldn't let him double dip. So when he started Jovian and started licensing, anybody who used design would have to pay him. He wanted me to pay him a royalty. And I looked at him and I said, Rye, you have to be kidding. We're either business partners or we're not.
Mhm.
So I'm not paying you any royalty. And let's dissolve our partnership because I have the rights to everything I've done.
So he wanted to be paid by royalty because he had.
He wanted his whole mission. He thought he was going to be shot
Mhm.
in Arizona by the mother of someone he had done a chart for. And he knew, quote, the day and the time from the voice, and the voice was never wrong. So he knew he had a given period of time that he would have to earn enough money to set his family up to survive without him. And that was his goal.
Hmm.
And so he wanted passive income to keep coming in. And he needed to find people who would comply. He was not wise to pick me because I honor my contracts and I don't fudge data.
Yeah,
So,
and you're a shit disturber like me, so it's good.
so the dog passing in front of my house. Um, my dog Sam, if I'm walking him and he sees another dog, he goes crazy. If somebody else is walking him, he doesn't care. But I have been knocked over by my dogs,
Hmm.
so I have to be careful because they weigh a lot more than I do.
I want
Uh,
to, I want to ask you a question about your dogs. Because there was one day where Marvin and I went out for a walk, and we took the dogs with us. So we went by the club there, and as we were driving back, I think you had called him and asked him if he was close to returning home. And it was because the dogs started like reacting. And we were probably 6 minutes from the house still, right? Like it wasn't 100 feet. It was a stronger sense than that. But that made me curious because it's, like, do you know it's how they behave that you've watched and
Well, if nobody's in the house except me, if the housekeeper is here, they may be with her or they may be with me. But if they're with me and they're usually Sam is on his pillow on this side of me and Mac is on the other side of me on his pillow. And if they sense that Marvin has come through the gate, Mac will get up and go to the door. And because Mac is not trustworthy, especially with paper,
so
I can't let him wander in the house by himself. So when he starts to stir like that, if Marvin is on his way home, I know I could send Mac down and he'll wait at the front door. But I'm sort of checking my perception. Is this something else going on, or is it that they're sensing? Like this morning, Marvin went out for an hour and I was here doing a YouTube reading, and Mac was sitting right next to me. And then all of a sudden he jumped up and he wanted to go downstairs. And I let him go. And within 2 minutes, the car came through the drive. So they do sense the nearness of the frequency of the people. And I am beginning to know what the difference is. Now, Sam will bark if a dog passes by. He's a very good watchdog. But like now he's sleeping. But if it's the morning and we're meditating and the blinds open, he's out there looking to see which people are passing by with their dogs. And then he can bark. And then Mac barks, not knowing what it is, but he'll bark because Sam's barking. We have a circus.
Sorry?
We have a circus in our home.
Well, it was the day I was leaving, I think. Like, I had seen how much Mac likes paper. Like, it was basically keep the bathroom doors closed or the toilet paper rolls coming off. But he also got into my laptop bag, opened the zipper, and there was, I think I had food in there, but he pulled my journal out and then just started shredding a page of it. And it was like, so he could smell the paper.
Yes.
Through the
We put, I had the painter here last week to do my wall, and I had him do the pantry because some of the shelves were a little stained, and we put some paper towel over them, waiting for paper to put on the shelves. And Matt got in one day and he chewed a design on the edge of all the paper towels. How can you be angry? It's beautiful.
So
It's
your house is full of books. He's not pulling books off the shelves though, right? So he's somewhat.
No, he doesn't take books off the shelves.
Yeah.
Unless he were left in a room with a library.
Like that would be a mistake. Okay. Yeah.
No, we don't let Mac. He's been known to chew checks. When we moved, the movers lost 100 boxes. So we had a lawsuit and we won quite a bit of money. And the check was on my desk and Mac ate half of it. We had to call the lawyer's office and say our dog ate the check. And the receptionist fortunately started laughing, and she said, my dog does the same thing.
Wow. Yeah, that's not the response you'd expect from someone that's already not eager to cut you a check. But I guess that's
I
funny.
mean, it was a little scary to have a check of that size
Mhm.
eaten,
Yeah.
but
It's never a
it
good
was,
excuse to go to the teacher and say your homework was eaten. So that never worked. Um,
I
cool.
never had a dog eat my homework.
No? Yeah, well, that's actually my question.
The
Like you
dogs we had then didn't eat paper.
and Sam wouldn't dare eat one of your journals, I imagine, right? Yeah.
Sam is completely trustworthy.
Mhm. Just likes paper.
Because when we've gone out, if both of us go out and the housekeeper isn't here, we leave them in the front room downstairs. If Sam doesn't want to go into the room, he can wander the house
Mhm.
because he's not going to get into any mischief. But Mac will go after paper on my desk, paper on Marvin's desk, paper anywhere.
I was just about to wrap, but Name just tossed. It's not even so much a question. It is a kind of a question, but it came up from yes. It was so yesterday. I was in class. I think it was in class. So she says, "Did you talk about premature manifestation?" I don't know what question I have about that, but more it'd be helpful to hear her riff on timing. And I was you kind of said that you were just riffing, but you basically said so almost like suffering from premature manifestation, which to me is just a grown man is funny because it's so close to other areas where you don't.
Prematurely do things.
Yeah, so it's just pretty funny. Um, and
A lot of
as
times people don't get my sense of humor.
yeah, well, and at the time I was like, did she know she just said that? So, but I love the because even the thought of it, like I can get an idea in my
It
head.
takes 3 months for manifestation,
Yeah.
according to the charts. So when you set goals, you need to set them with an idea that they're going to play out over time.
Mhm.
And you don't want to be precipitous in pushing them before they're ready. And a lot of times people are impatient
Mhm.
and they push things before they're ready. And it backfires. So you need to know your own timing
Mhm.
and you need to wait until the time is right.
Yeah, that's a constant evolution and learning experience for me lately.
There's another component of it,
Mhm.
which is um, just because you can doesn't mean you do.
Mhm.
And when you have goals that can manifest, sometimes we're tested by it seeming like it's right when there's a nuance that makes it not right. And when you compromise, then it's a do-over. So that's what I mean by premature manifestation. You have to wait till you know because you know because you know. And if you don't wait till you know because you know because you know, it's not going to turn out okay.
So we've talked about this a lot, and you've helped me a great deal with moving away from, and again, this human design speak, like a sacral response. It's more spiritual decisions and based on my values, and those take time.
And it's mental.
Yeah.
It's mental. You're taking the splenic center and you're taking the solar plexus and you're putting them together with creative intelligence and asking for guidance.
Right. My follow-up question to that, and it's more for potentially everybody else. When you were explaining that and walking me through that, I internalize it as specifically more for me. But if 99% of us are manifesting generators and have the potential to manifest quickly or manifest prematurely, like that suggestion that you gave me, that broadly speaking, that's the general rule then, right? Okay,
Mhm.
good. I think that's hugely helpful, and more people need to hear that.
Nobody should be manifesting without it going through their sacral center. And even I did a YouTube reading this morning for someone. His name is Graham, if you're looking for it, when Name posts it.
Graham. Yeah, he's a projector in the four worlds.
He is a projector in the four worlds. But as I said to him, that doesn't mean he doesn't have a sacral center. His sacral center has all possibilities. And he knows when it's right for him. Now he has the 60th gate and he has the 42. But the 42 is until the postnatal. The 60 is there. He has the 3254. He has the 5818 in the lunar, which means that if you're looking at the 31st path of intelligence, he has enough information from the breathing to bring it up through frequency and up through goals. So there's someone, if what's in front of him is incongruent with his goals, do not act. If the frequency doesn't resonate to what he knows is aligned on a spiritual level, don't act. We have many different pathways within the body map for knowing what we know.
Mm-hmm.
The sacral center is not the only way to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And he has the route to the splenic, he has the route to the splenic in several different charts, but the primary definition in his chart is from the head, from the ajna to the throat. And he's a channel, a psychic channel, and the self to the throat. So he's not here for himself. He's here as a channel. And the tricky part for him is making sure he doesn't compromise who he is for other people. So I wouldn't label someone a projector.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even label people anything because it's not, well, I didn't do it in the DSM. I'm not going to do it in design.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's Topher, another, so he's a manifester in the four worlds. It was a real eye-opener hanging with him in Santa Fe. Like, we booked an hour and a half to hang out. We spent 8 hours and then pretty much the whole day together. And it was great because I could just like test everything I thought I understood about a manifestor and a manifesting generator, and went through that dance. And really, we were just two dudes that really got each other. and like type didn't correlate at all, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, but I almost felt like I needed to sort of experience sort of that extreme. That's not the right word, but just like, it was good recon. It was an eye opener, and it, I get it. Like, it's just moving energy. It's that
Yes.
light. You can see it's like shining right in your eye.
Yeah.
We're at an hour 44, so we went a little extra long today. Do you want to wrap it up? And
Sure, we can wrap it up if you want.
yeah, the light shining in your eye, and I gotta get some food in me. I'm getting hungry. So, okay, awesome as always. I'm gonna turn off the feed here. So
Now, next week is Thanksgiving week.
Mhm.
I'm good for that for next week. And then the week after, maybe we can do the podcast on Thursday so it could be broadcast on Friday.
Sure. Yeah. I wonder, and maybe I should just ask you off camera. I'll just ask you now. I wonder if Diane would like to join us. Like you could, the three of us could meet.
I don't know that she would want to. I can
Okay.
ask her. Um, my guess is she'd say no, but I will ask.
Sure. No is totally fine. But yeah, I haven't really, we've only exchanged emails so far. And yeah, I just love to ask her questions about mom while mom's there. so so that might be fun, but only if everyone wants to play. So
Well, I'll ask her. I'll ask her tonight. Diane and I talk every day.